Hello everyone! Sorry, I'm just not making a habit of this. Every day some breaking news that I have to tell you about. I just have to tell you about this one. Now, we have a report from a random member of the public, who's the same member of the public as it was yesterday. Okay, what can you tell us about what's happened and why are you in a cave? Yes, once again, I was here to see another piece of breaking news that I just had to tell you about. I mean, it's such a coincidence. It's unbelievable. So, yes, and at the moment, as you can see, I'm in a cave, but not for long. You see, something else amazing has happened. Now, what you have to understand again is the Israelites, once again, have not been listening to God. I know. Tell me another story, for goodness sake. They've not been listening over and over and over. But this time it got quite bad, and the Israelites have been living in caves. So what has happened is that because every time they tried to leave the caves to plant crops or get cows or things like that, then other people would come along, their enemies, and would destroy everything. It was a horrible state of affairs living in a cave. I mean, who would think that someone like me would live in a cave? But that's what happened. Now, what had happened is that there was a chap called Gideon. I don't know if you've heard of Gideon before, but Gideon, now he was visited by an angel. Yes, a real life shiny glittery angel came to visit Gideon. Now, Gideon, most people, whenever God spoke to them or told them to do something, normally they would listen. If an angel turns up and tells you to do something, you say, "Righto, angel, off I go." But Gideon, they had to keep testing it and had to keep guessing whether what the angel said was actually what God wanted him to do. It's quite funny, really. But what happened was, Gideon was told that he would gain victory over the Midianites who had them captive, who kept them in their caves. It was quite horrible, but Gideon was told by God that he would be victorious. So, Gideon gathered an army. And like I said, Gideon kept testing and doubting about what exactly was going on. So he had this thing where he would lie a sheepskin down on the floor and say to God, "God, if it's really you who wants me to do this, then can you make the ground covered in dew and the sheepskin dry?" And so God did, but Gideon was like, "Well, I'm not sure, so can you make the ground dry and the sheepskin wet with dew?" And he kept going, and eventually Gideon believed him. I mean, my word, you'd think that after seeing an angel and hearing God's voice, he might actually listen, but no, it was so funny. So Gideon had a massive army. Big enough that without God they would actually be able to defeat the Midianites quite easily. But God didn't think that was a very good idea. God wanted to show them that they couldn't beat the Midianites and get out of trouble without the help of God. So God spoke to Gideon and said, "Look, Gideon, you need to chop down the size of your army. It's far too big." So Gideon listened and went to his army and said, "Right, chaps, if some of you want to go home, that's fine by me." So they did. So his army got a bit smaller, but still God said, "Your army is too big. You need to be able to do this through my power, through God's power, rather than through power of your own." So he came up with a test. And so he said to Gideon, "Take your men down to the river. Some of them will drink with sticking their faces in the water, like that, drinking like that, and some of them will scoop it up and drink from their hands." Yes? So what happened is Gideon watched and he saw the people how they drank, how the army drank the water, and God said that he had to sort them by the people who drank straight down in the water, that they had to go home. It was really strange, because to begin with, he had an army of over 10,000 men, and after all these things, God told people to go home. He was only left with 300. 300 men! Oh, that's not an army. That's not an army at all. But God was in power of this. God was in control, of course. And so, one night, Gideon and his army of 300 men, they went and they hid on the hills, looking down at the Midianites who were all gathered together. And God had told them that they would win. So, what God told Gideon to do was that he would turn his army, he would split his army into three. So 100, 100, 100. He would have 3 sets of 100 people, and they all snuck down, and they gathered around the army in the dark, and they had horns, and they had little torches in jars, and suddenly, all at once, they all smashed the jar, and they blew their trumpets, and oh my word, the racket, and the Midianites were so confused, and they jumped up out of their beds, and what's going on, what's going on? And so much so, they were so confused and so scared that they started fighting each other. I mean, there were 300 men just, and a giant army, so many people you couldn't even count them, and God turned them against each other. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. The Midianites actually defeated themselves. So what happened was Gideon and his 300 men, they defeated them. It was absolutely incredible. So now we get to leave our caves because they're taking back over the river. Now I haven't had a drink in days. I must go and see. Anyway, bye. Right. Right, old Margaret. Bye. We'll see you later. My words. I mean, that's quite a good story, isn't it? That chap Gideon, blimey, God really used him to bring some good for the Israelites. It's amazing how the Israelites keep ignoring him, but God keeps doing good for him. Anyway, I hope we don't see you again. Well, it was nice, but ta-ra!